Hi everyone, my name is Kate Bailey. I am the Policy and Research Director at EcoCycle. EcoCycle is one of the oldest and largest nonprofit recyclers in the US, and I've been happy to be a member of the team for 17 years now. I've been working on zero waste initiatives. I got my start in recycling a long time ago as a kid, but it was really college when I became a lot more interested in it. It was my first college job to actually collect recyclables from around campus at the University of Colorado, which is one of the founding recycling programs in the country, way before my time. But that experience really helped me understand how recycling works and really got me interested. I was an environmental studies major with a minor in economics. And recycling to me was, and still is, a really tangible way in which we interact with our environment and in which we make a difference every day. And I like to think that, you know, we're not always in a position where we can put solar panels on our house or buy an electric car, but each of us can recycle, and each of us can recycle every day. And so to me, recycling is just this really great, really tangible action that embodies a lot of the work and the schooling that I did around protecting our environment and protecting human health. For a lot of us, recycling is that blue bin that sits in the corner of our office or our school or our house, and we toss our aluminum can or a newspaper in there, and that's sort of the end of the story. We sort of, we put it in the bin, somebody takes it away, and we stop thinking about it. And that's really the boring part of recycling, right? The exciting stuff really happens on where it goes after it gets picked up from your house or your work. And so let's follow that path for a little bit. So your recycling gets collected, it gets sent to what's called a materials recovery facility, or a MRF. There's usually there's about 400 across the country. So it gets sent to a regional MRF, and from there we use a bunch of conveyor belts and magnets and people. It's sort of like a mini reverse factory, and we are separating out the recyclable materials into the aluminum cans and the newspaper and the cardboard. And then we take those materials and we ship them. We sell them, usually around the country, sometimes around the world, to be made into new products. And that's really how recycling happens. It really happens when a company buys your old newspaper and turns it into another paper product, turns it into a cardboard box. Like that's the secret. That's really when the recycling happens. And I think that's really important that we start to think about recycling as that type of a business. So when we start to talk about some of the problems with recycling, part of it is we're not quite thinking about recycling the right way. We tend to think of recycling as an alternative to trash. That recycling is, well, I'm keeping materials out of landfills and incinerators. And that's great. Landfills and incinerators have a lot of problems, and we'd like to reduce our use of them as much as possible. But recycling is really about business, and recycling is really about the supply chain. And every time we make a new product or a new package, we should be thinking about recycling as supplying those raw materials. So when we work our way toward building a circular economy, what that means is that all of the products are being made from recycled materials. So your aluminum can is being made into new products, and so is your glass and your paper. And that's really, really an important paradigm shift in how we think about recycling, really making it part of how business operates, how we get materials, so we don't go drill for oil and mine for metals and cut down trees to make new products and packaging, but instead we turn to the materials that we've already used, our recyclables, and we use them over and over again. And so I think making that shift is really important to helping us improve recycling moving forward. So right now about 85%, maybe 90% of the materials that we make and use could be recycled or composted or reused if we sorted them correctly and they went to the right place. But a lot of communities don't have access to those programs. They're not convenient. So sadly, we end up throwing away more than 2/3 of our discards in this country. And we are far behind a lot of other developed countries. And a lot of countries in the EU are working toward a circular economy and really setting really ambitious national goals. And so we definitely have a lot of lessons we can learn from around the world, as well as some great cities here in the US taking action to really get those recyclables, stop them from ever going to the landfill or incinerator in the first place. What doesn't get sold is often contamination. So this could be plastic bags, this could be lots of materials that we ask not to put in the recycling bin. Diapers, couches, you name it, we have seen it at the recycling center. So there's a little bit of stuff that's just not going to get recycled because we can't accept it. We've also definitely seen a lot of what we call wish cycling, where people think, oh, I really want it to be recyclable, so I'll put it in the bin and they'll figure it out. That's really not how it works. And as a recycler, it's challenging, but also gives me a lot of hope because people care. They want to recycle. They want their product to be recyclable. They want to put it in the right bin. So wish cycling is great in that it really shows that people care. But as a recycler, it's really challenging because it increases our contamination, makes it really hard to sell the materials, and it's a really big problem with plastics. There's a lot of confusion around what plastics can be recycled. There's a lot of companies that are greenwashing what can be recycled in terms of plastics. So a lot of companies just not being very straightforward about whether or not their plastic is recyclable. There's a lot of confusion about the recycling symbol. That does not mean the plastic is recyclable. So what we tell people is generally plastic bottles, tubs, jugs, and jars. What we see is everything and anything plastic, right? We see CD cases, we see plastic bags, we see all sorts of different food packaging, styrofoam. None of those materials are recyclable in your traditional curbside recycling. So wish cycling is definitely a really big challenge for recyclers, even though we know it's people trying to do the right thing. This is a really big question, right? And there's a lot we can do to improve recycling, and there's really been a lot of national attention on recycling in the past couple of years, and that has been really positive in moving some of these conversations forward. We recognize that recycling plays a really critical role, but we really haven't invested in our recycling system in a long time. And there's lots of work that we need to do here in terms of infrastructure, policies, programs, as well as community engagement. And we all have a role to play. And so I'll just hit some very quick highlights, but it starts at the beginning with how the product is designed. Is the product designed to use recyclable materials and made from recycled products to start with? And then can it be recycled or composted at the end of use? And what are the barriers to recycling or composting at that stage? So there's a lot we can do to pressure companies to make their products more recyclable and to use more recycled material when they make those products. Then there's us, right? The consumers, the residents, the households. There's a lot more we can do to make sure that we put recycling in the right containers. We understand what can be recyclable, and we have access to recycling everywhere we go. We've really focused a lot in the US about having recycling at home, but there's so much more work we need to do in terms of getting recycling at businesses, at schools, anywhere you're out in the community, apartments. really are lacking recycling infrastructure across the country. So we can really work with local governments to increase access to recycling for all of us to be able to participate better. And then on the back end, as I talked about at the beginning, recycling is really a business. We need somebody to buy those recyclable materials and turn them into a new product or packaging for the whole system to work. And that's where we really need commitments from companies to buy recycled bottles and use them to make new bottles. We're missing that critical piece of the demand side. One of the things that I like about recycling, but that is also challenging about recycling, is it looks a little bit different everywhere you go. So if you go to Japan, there's communities that sort into 30 plus different containers. And if you go to some places in South America, they just sort into wet versus dry. Was recently in Europe, and they commonly have 5 or 6 different ways that they sort materials. So I think the answer just kind of depends, and it's challenging because there is no one size fits all solution, but it also is very creative and innovative, and you really have to figure out what works best in your community. I think for a lot of the US rural communities in particular, sticking with dual stream makes sense, having multiple sorts. But when I look at some of our dense urban areas, it's hard to say that you're going to have room for some of those sorting systems. And so maybe single stream makes more sense when you have a really dense area and you can invest more in technology. I don't think there's a blanket answer for which one makes more sense, but I think there's a lot of opportunity for us to explore what works best for my community. And then there's lots of variation even within single stream and dual stream, whether glass is included, and then there's store take back programs. And you know, there's just a wide array of recycling collection systems, and we probably need all of them to move forward. I think I would share 3 things for your zero waste journey. 1, let's make this about more than just waste, right? So recycling really is an amazing opportunity for us to impact a lot of environmental and social issues. For one, recycling and composting are some of the easiest, fastest things we can do to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. So the more we talk about recycling and the more we want to, help promote recycling, the more we have to connect it to air pollution and water pollution and climate and green jobs and environmental justice issues. And it really is a solution that matches with and helps with a lot of our problems. So let's champion recycling as not just a waste solution, but a solution to a lot of our challenges. The second thing I would say is recycling is not the final goal. There's a lot more we can always do to reduce waste, which is our first goal. And so recycling is sort of a step along the way toward a circular economy. So we don't want to recycle 100% of everything. We want to get rid of what we can, recycle what we can, and build our way toward a circular economy. And then the last thing I would just add is a lot of us start with recycling and zero waste and get really focused on a zero waste lifestyle and all of the changes we can individually make, which is awesome place to start. But we all have a lot of power in our community. We all have a lot of ways we can influence change. So really encourage you to look beyond your lifestyle to the places you go, to your work, to your school, to your church. How can you help improve recycling in those places? And then maybe how can you get involved with recycling in your community? How can you tell your city council that this is important to you? Tell your university that this is something that matters. We all have so much voice as a voter, as just a member of the community, as a member of our work and our school and our churches. I think we underestimate how much change we are capable of. So I encourage people to ripple out and look for those opportunities to create larger zero waste change in their community and in their spheres of influence. And thank you all for your great work that you're doing.